Okay.
Oh, look at all those people.
It's going to be a full house tonight, huh? Standing room only.
Okay, let me see if I can get Cam. Oh no, it does not look like he is in the attendees. All right, everyone, we're just going to give it 30 seconds. Cam's having some technical difficulties, unfortunately. So we're trying to figure that out with him. But in the meantime, we can actually get started, and Cam will be able to join us later. Welcome. All right, everyone, we're just going to give it 30 seconds. Cam's having some technical... Sorry, that was my YouTube. Good evening and welcome to Lafayette Forward, a virtual candidate forum. I'm your co-host, Jeremy Levine of Inclusive Lafayette, born and raised in this town. We're here to discuss two of the greatest crises facing California today, the climate crisis and the housing crisis. We'll be asking how the candidates for City Council, Cam Burks, Gina Dawson, Farshad Farzan, and Carl Landuri plan to move Lafayette forward on these challenging issues. And now, please give my co-host, Mike Rode, a round of applause.
Thank you. I always appreciate the Cub Scout jokes. They're always appreciated. Hi, thank you, Jeremy, and thank you for the candidates for participating tonight. And of course, thank you to everyone who helped put this forum together. There was a lot of people behind the scenes who worked hard to put this together tonight. So as Jeremy said, my name is Mike Rode. My family has lived here in Lafayette for 11 years. I've been a community volunteer for most of our time here, and I'm currently with Sustainable Lafayette. So that means I'm looking forward to working with the city and the chamber for next year. Questions from Sustainable Lafayette come directly from the board, and they do reflect our current and future interests. Hi, Cam. Good to see you.
Thanks.
Okay.
Sorry, Mike.
No, we're just right in the middle of our introductions, and we're just getting started here. So our questions are going to range from climate change to bike safety to social justice. And with that said, it does look like we have a full audience tonight. So let's get started. Jeremy?
Thanks, Mike. We'll now move into the candidates' opening statements. Each candidate will have 4 minutes to introduce themselves. Let's start with Cam. Made it just in the nick of time, so that's the order I was planning for.
Thank you. Thanks so much, Jeremy. Am I muted or am I not muted? Let's see.
You're good. We can hear you.
All right, cool. Jeremy, Mike, thanks very much. And Chris, I don't know if you're on the line. Thanks for your help setting this up. And it's great to see my fellow partners in crime, Farshad, Carl, and Gina. And so I'm Cam Burks. I'm currently on the city council, serving in my first term. I was elected in 2016. And I'm obviously coming up on the end of year number 4. Let's see, I'm a dad. Proudest thing I guess I can say, of 2 girls in our school system, and one at Ocalanes, one at Stanley. Moved to Lafayette in 2010. Moved from Washington D.C., where I came from the U.S. State Department. I was a foreign service officer, so I was a diplomat for about 15 years. And during that time, I was also a special agent that worked on security matters, primarily overseas, primarily dealing with counterterrorism issues. But during my time in the State Department, I had the pleasure of serving on Madeleine Albright's protective detail, former Secretary of State, and also Colin Powell, his security detail. From the State Department, I moved into the private sector and am now Vice President of Global Security for a major technology company down in the South Bay, and did the same thing at Chevron Corporation for about 8 years before that, purely on the security side, not on the business side, just helping keeping our people safe. Hey, listen, I'll cut the 4 minutes short because I know we got a lot to, these last 4 years have been the proudest 4 years of public service I've ever had. Surpassed my time in the State Department by far. Local issues and helping lead this town with my peers on the council has been an honor. And having 26,000, I think we're going to get there after this census, bosses to report to is just a fantastic special experience. And one of the proudest things that I was involved in was putting forth this item on our agenda about 3 months ago to establish a task force that looked to advance diversity and inclusion and equity in Lafayette. And it's actually what prompted me to run again. I don't know if I would have run again if that had not have happened, and if we wouldn't have passed the agenda item unanimously, which we did. So we formed our task force. I made the motion to elect Susan Candell as chair, and I did so because she will likely be mayor next year, and I believe that the task force rose to the level where the mayor should actually lead it. So important I believed it was. Looking back, during my undergraduate schooling, where this kind of all came forward to, I did earn a degree in sociology and race relations, and there's a whole story behind that. So I'm very, very, very passionate in this space. There's been a lot we've done over the last 4 years that I'll get into over the next hour or so, Jeremy, and hope to have. I think there's some time for Q&A at the end, Jeremy, right? And some back and forth and some discussion. But I just want to thank you again and Inclusive Lafayette for doing this, especially during the pandemic. This provides an easy forum for everybody to tune into and out of while they're cooking dinner and so forth. So thanks very much.
Absolutely. Thank you, Cam. Moving on to Gina.
Well, thank you. So Gina Dawson, and thank you to Sustainable Lafayette and Inclusive Lafayette for this invitation to this forum. It's good to see the fellow candidates and have opportunity to answer questions. So issues of inclusivity and sustainability are personal ones for me. I'm a multi-ethnic person. My dad is from the Philippines, and my mother is a Philadelphian of Irish descent. And I know from their experience, and occasionally my own, how impacting it is to feel or be identified as other. And I really do. I want to work to eliminate the dichotomy of us and them, no matter what form that us and them takes, from the world in whatever way I can, effectively can, because we truly are in this together, and it's no more apparent than when we are all facing this global climate change. I'll tell you a little bit about myself, why you might be wondering why I think I can make a difference in Lafayette. I had a very successful career in high tech. It was based on work of sound planning, building and managing effective teams, sound research, and development of products and projects from launch all the way through continuous improvement cycles and through phase out. So going through the process, and I would apply these same skill sets and experience to the work of city council. And it's the same work ethic that I've applied over the past 12 years to community work that I've been doing to give back in a volunteer capacity. I've worked on community pipeline safety, and I've made real improvements to show on that. Brought a farmer's market to town with Sustainable Lafayette for community development, community building. Worked on school funding with Lafayette Partners in Education as they were formed and transitioned from LASF. With my husband, I founded Save Lafayette Trees, an environmental justice nonprofit that saved many trees from ill-considered destruction, and in the process, formed a resident gas safety task force and also an alliance for gas safety with stakeholders, including PG&E, the city, and the CPUC. So that was really important work to gain transparency to data we needed to make those gas priorities happen. I don't profess to know every aspect of our city ordinances, but I am committed to learning. As exemplified just recently, I rolled up my sleeves and attended a 3-day conference of the California chapter of the American Planning Association. And I learned from thought leaders about the evolving planning issues happening right now, and obviously the issues that we are talking about, sustainability and inclusivity. I'm the type of person that studies issues, creates an action plan, facilitates and leverages teamwork, which is so important to get things done. I'm endorsed by entire city council, Don Tatson, Assembly Member Rebecca Bauer-Khan, and many others, including many of you, and I do appreciate it, your support. I want Lafayette to be a more welcoming and accessible to a diverse population by promoting the necessary factors such as a range of affordable housing options, a vibrant business core, community building, and an attentive, proactive governing body. I want to protect our open space and ridgelines for all current and future residents. And we can do this and meet our housing goals by encouraging inclusive housing developed in the center of a vibrant downtown and a transit-oriented downtown core. I would support bold action climate change initiatives that advance climate change resiliency in our town that obviously would have impacts the greater community. And most importantly, I want to double down on transparency and public engagement. So our community can confidently know that we're leading them into the future, listening to them and responsive to existing residents and newcomers, that they're welcomed and well served.
Thank you, Gina. That's the 4 minutes.
Thanks.
Moving on to Carl.
Okay, well, I want to join Gina and Cam in thanking Inclusive Lafayette and Sustainable Lafayette for making this forum available this evening, and thank you for all that you do for the community. I don't need to spend a lot of time explaining why inclusiveness and sustainability are beneficial, desirable, and essential. We need to focus on what we would do to become a more inclusive community and a more sustainable community. I do want to put this discussion, though, in the context of the 5 challenges that Lafayette faces and talk about how those challenges affect inclusiveness and sustainability. First is the existential challenge of climate change. In Lafayette, we now see the threat of climate change most starkly in wildfire. We have to take this into account when we consider how we develop our city. Second is the challenge of the state housing shortage and the actions of the state legislature that make it even more challenging for Lafayette. Third is the challenge to, at last, provide racial justice and equity and to make our community more inclusive. Fourth is a demographic challenge. We are all getting older. Lafayette is getting older. Fifth is the economic challenge from the pandemic, which will mean that Lafayette's revenues will decrease. This is the limiting factor on what we need to do. For me, the core issue is sustainability, because unless we are a sustainable community, in a sustainable state, in a sustainable country, and so on, the challenge of climate change will overwhelm all others. So big picture, looking at the challenges of climate change and housing, that means we need to provide more housing closer to transit, close to urban centers, and we need to match it with jobs and retail so we are living and working as sustainably as possible. We know we will face pressure from the state. We need to get ahead of that and proactively plan the housing, including affordable housing, together with office and retail that we want. There is much more that needs to be said on this topic, but we will be better off if we plan our own future rather than having it forced on us. This housing will lead to a more diverse and inclusive community, including new opportunities for seniors downtown and for our teachers and for our own children. Tonight, I'll be drawing a distinction between our downtown corridor and our neighborhoods outside the downtown corridor. I believe that our general plan embodies a grand bargain, but the neighborhoods, hillsides, and ridges outside our downtown will remain relatively undeveloped, and in return, we will add density in our downtown. Our topography and our infrastructure cannot support great density outside our downtown. Just as an example, I live in Release Valley. Release Valley Road is the narrowest possible collector road. Given the pre-pandemic traffic levels and what we can expect post-pandemic, and the fact that this is a high fire risk area, it would be unthinkable to add significant density. And this is true of most of our neighborhoods. What I would suggest for areas outside the downtown corridor is a major effort to make it easier to build accessory dwelling units. This is a much more appropriate contribution for our city to make to the housing shortage. And we should work to make sure we get credit for doing this in arena allocations and otherwise. In summary, I do think that the big issues for us with respect to inclusiveness and sustainability relate to land use planning and housing, but there are many other aspects as well, and I look forward to discussing those with you tonight.
Thank you, Carl. Farzan. Farshad.
Hi, that's okay. It's the last name. Thanks everybody, and thanks for having us. And I really appreciate the forum. And as I said before in other forums, you have great candidates here. So you're going to hear good things from very smart people, and I appreciate that I'm among this group. I want to give you a little bit of background about me because I don't think a lot of people know. So my family moved here about 7 years ago. My wife is an elementary school teacher, and she's an early literacy coach in the Pittsburgh School District. And I have a 9th grader at Akalani's. So we're fully ingrained here. I've been a lawyer for about 20 years. 15 years of that was as a litigator. And the last 5 has been in-house at tech companies and fintech companies. And right now I'm the general counsel and head of legal for a finance company that finances green energy upgrades to your homes, et cetera. So I'm obviously very in tune with sustainability. I'm going to say the same things that Gina did. Inclusion and diversity are personal to me, not just because of my name and the way I look. I'm a war refugee. I'm also a political asylee, and I've lived in 3 different countries, and I've been a minority all except 6 years of my life. So I understand what it means when you're included and when you're excluded. It makes a huge difference, and you remember all those moments. So it's very personal to me. I'm also in an interracial relationship with my wife. So we have an interracial child. So it's important to me that he's accepted no matter what, no matter where he is, where he goes. So my biggest issue, one of the biggest reasons I'm running for office, is to bring everybody to the table from all sides, demographics, gender, sexual identity, whatever it is. We want everybody at the table, and that's what I'm going to work for. In terms of sustainability, I will just tell you, I want to lead. I've already do it myself. I have solar on my house. I have an electric car. I have a tankless water heater. We were trying to get to zero. We're trying to be, energy neutral in our house. I think I'm trying to set an example, but here's the issue. I'm lucky enough to be able to afford that. It's not easy for everyone. So we need to work to try to make it easier for everyone to be able to do those kinds of things and not just have it for people who can afford those things. So it's clear to me that needs to happen. I will follow up what Carl said, focusing on the downtown corridor, because that helps in every realm. It helps with walking, biking. It helps being next to BART, mass transit. It helps our local businesses because you can go there. Everything is right there. And most importantly, people stay out of their cars. So that's generally me, and that's my background. And the last thing I'll say is I'm not running against anybody in this race. I'm hoping you just vote for me because you agree with my ideas. Again, there are not bad candidates in this race. You have great candidates. So you're not going to go wrong with it. And the last thing I'll say, probably faster than everybody else here, is I want there to be fresh ideas, new ideas to come through. I think there's a sense in our community that we have the same people running everything. I'm not saying it's true, but there is a feeling that they're lifetime appointments. So we need to get new people involved, get new ideas, get more people to the table to come to better our community. Our community is great, but you can always get better, and we have smart people to do that. And I'll stop there. Thank you.
Wow, thank you, candidates. I think we've just shown that we truly do have a great group of candidates here tonight, and I'm looking forward to moving on to the moderated portion of our forum, in which Jeremy and I will ask all of the candidates the same questions. Every candidate will be given 1.5 minutes to respond to each question. Jeremy, would you like to explain the rules?
Oh, you're mute.
Right after you take off the mute.
Yeah, I knew I was going to do that the minute I muted myself. Yeah, I'm happy to explain. There are a few ground rules for this portion of the evening, just a few. No interrupting each other. It's all just a minute and a half answering the same question. No personal attacks on each other or any individual, and no baseless claims. We are not going to fact check you, but please follow the rule. Say if you're going to make specific claims, know that you have evidence to back it up. Where possible, please answer our questions directly, ideally including specific policy solutions. Our audience is here to learn about how you intend to improve Lafayette, so please respect their time and give detailed answers given the limited time you have. Is there anything else, Mike?
Yeah, I'll just quickly fill in the audience a little bit more. The candidates did receive 6 of the questions in advance, and then we also have 2 curveball questions planned for which they have not prepared. So after the moderated portion, we'll move on to unmoderated questions, and that's where you, the audience, come into play. So if you want to ask questions to the candidates, please use the Q&A feature in the chat. We'll only have time for a few, so please make sure to have them ready. So now let's get started with the moderated questions. And it looks like I'm up for question number 1, and then we'll just go in order here. And this question does come from Sustainable Lafayette with biking. So the question is, biking and walking are environmentally friendly modes of transportation. How would you make Lafayette safer for cyclists and pedestrians? And so I have Gina up to go first. And now you're on mute.
Yeah, I saw that remark to unmute. So, okay. Well, thanks. So first, I think the most important thing to acknowledge is that we've had 4 traffic-related deaths in the past 10 years, and it's just unacceptable. It's for a town of any size, let alone for a town of our size. So I think the most important thing that I would do is make bike and pedestrian and biking safety a priority, because that will help us align resources behind that and planning focus. So that being said, we leverage the tools that are available to the city, and there's been a lot of planning that's been done before. There's plans that have been out that we need to dust off, and there's also, we leverage the great work from the community. The the Safe Routes to Acalanes is one group that's doing some fantastic work, finding their own funding and research for that. Same with the group out of Burton Valley, who's been working with the Safe Track folks in Berkeley. So there's a lot of work that's coming from the community that we need to help facilitate them getting to these solutions. Specific ideas that I would explore are simple ones that can have great impact, like green striping and major bike routes, more bike parking, just really facilitating that pilot program in Burton Valley where there was a recent tragedy there. And importantly, enforcing traffic rules, especially at busy intersections. Those are easier things that we can do that are already in motion that we should be doing and focusing on to start. And then from there, exploring more complex resolution to the issue.
Great, thank you, Gina. Moving on, Farside, I have you up next.
Thank you. So Gina stole a lot of my thunder, so I'll go quicker. So I agree. I'm an avid bicyclist and runner. I ride 40, 50 miles every week. So I know the dangers of driving through Lafayette and La Miranda. I've been brushed by cars on multiple occasions, both running and walking. So I'm an adult at least. So I at least try to have my mind focused. I'm more concerned about our kids. We want them to be on their bikes. We want them to be able to walk around. I don't want to have it where we're using a car that drops people off when they could ride a bike there or walk there like I did when I was a kid. So we want to make it as safe as possible. As simple as this is, we need to have education for people who live in Lafayette to be careful when they're driving around with bicyclists and walkers. Specific issues, I know time is short. I agree, we need to mark off our bike lanes better. Even places that we have bike lanes, they're faded, they're hard to see. Green, make them wider in the places that we can make them. I think it's also good to continue walkways. There are places where we have walkways and then they end, and then you have to walk through a road a little bit to then hit a walkway again. So as much as we can continue walkways, the better it is. I would also make longer wait times at streetlights so people don't feel rushed if they have to cross the street, especially in busy intersections, especially near kids. And I think just finally, we should just get people out on their bikes and get people to walk. I think it's a simple thing to do. I think there are lots of things you can do in Lafayette without getting into your car. So let's promote that, and safety is a part of that.
Great, thank you very much. Okay, the question is, how do you make Lafayette safer for cyclists and pedestrians? So Carl, you are up next.
Okay, well, there are two main approaches to this, I think. But let me just say, among us candidates, that we have a couple more fora, and there's going to be a lot of priorities, and not everything can be a big priority. But I think bicycles, encouraging bicycles in Lafayette should be a priority, because I think it really impacts the feeling of community. It impacts sustainability. It's just a good thing for all aspects of what we're trying to promote. Now, in 2006, when I was on the council, we approved the Bikeways Master Plan. This is now 14 years old. It's time to take a new look. I think it's worth bringing in a consultant and looking at this, but there's great, the people who worked on this did a great job, the people in the community. And there's a lot to see and hear that we need to implement. So I think we need to do that. And then even if we aren't able to do that because of finances, we need to keep bicycles in mind every time we make a decision, whether it relates to any circulation issue, whether it relates to what we do downtown. We need to think about how it affects bicycles.
Great, thank you, Carl. And Cam, how would you make Lafayette safer for cyclists and pedestrians?
I would do everything that Farshad, Gina, and Carl said, period. No, I really think, listen, we have, from a city perspective and government getting involved, we've come up with some great strategies. The downtown congestion reduction plan and study that we commissioned and had last year, had some of those the solutions in mind. We need to change the culture in Lafayette because the city doesn't have the money to, put brick and mortar to a lot of this. And that cultural change has to come through the various commissions and the various groups in town. Circulation planning, certainly. Everything really should be prioritized around making Lafayette a pedestrian, bicycle-friendly town. That should be our North Star. Period. I mean, I don't know what else we could say in coming up with solutions, but over government in this area, to me, is not going to work right now. But I am all for changing the character of this city by making it much more friendly, easier, and safer to hop on a bike and to walk and to get people downtown. It'll stimulate our economy. It'll do a lot of great things. But all of my friends here and colleagues have said outstanding things. Thanks.
Okay, great, excellent, thank you. Okay, so we have question number 2 is, what role should Lafayette play, if any, in being a good regional contributor to sustainability for the San Francisco Bay and an ally to the Bay Area's broader communities? The order of the answering the questions was done by random generator, and if by chance, I'm sorry, I thought I'd read Cam. It is Carl to go first. So Carl Landry, would you like to answer the question on being an ally to the Bay Area's broader communities?
Yes, well, first and foremost, we should provide our share of housing. I know there are some who say that Lafayette has enough housing for our needs. That's not the issue. We're part of a broader community. We're in a city that's got a BART station. We're close to the urban area. We need to provide our share of housing. And we need to be proactive and positive about it. We need to change the narrative and the perception of Lafayette and show that we are positive about adding housing to Lafayette. And we should take the lead in sustainability. In 2006, we were the first city in the area to adopt an environmental strategy. And in 2007, Sustainable Lafayette was formed and is really, along with the city's environmental task force, has done a great job of keeping Lafayette involved. We just need to keep up what's going on with those two organizations and really play a large role in what's going on in the region. Look beyond our borders and to see what we can do for the region.
Okay. Cam, you are up next.
Okay, thanks. So listen, I was a diplomat for 15 years. I'm not an isolationist. I'm somebody who wants to build coalitions, and certainly we need to work with communities around us, but we need to be really careful in doing so, because when you look at land use and the development of affordable housing, high density units near public transportation, we've done much better based on our culture and our character than some of our surrounding cities. And that to me is discouraging. And I won't hold back here. A lot of cities around us should have and should certainly do a better job. So I would want to take a very cautious approach to joining others in their strategies. I think the mayor's, the monthly mayor's meeting is a great forum for that. I got a lot out of that in talking strategy. But at the end of the day, we're not all Lafayette in the Bay Area. We're very special, and we have a spirit that defines us, I think, in a more positive way than a lot of others do. So I would just be very cautious as we engage, but definitely engage.
Great. Okay. Gina, how do you like to answer the question on helping sustain sustainability for the San Francisco Bay and being an ally to the Bay Area's broader communities?
Well, I agree with Carl that the first thing we need to do is do our part to address the issues of housing, creating housing and inclusive housing, because it's a statewide problem. And by representing that we have been doing our part, but we can even do more, is a leader. And actually that is really the prime reason, the prime rationale that we can do to be an ally is keep in our leadership role and sustainability efforts. We have a role model capacity right now, and we've been collaborating with other communities. Specifically, Sustainable Lafayette is a great example of a grassroots organization that the city has been leveraging our community talent, energy, and passion to incubate projects, so to speak, like the community garden or removing harmful chemicals from the schools, projects like that. So continuing collaboration, I think, is important, and taking our best thought leadership in terms of working with those communities, is, in terms of what Cam's saying, like being careful to, because we are unique, but at the same time, it's bringing other communities along. One way to do that too is Contra Costa County just adopted the climate change declaration of emergency, and we should definitely support those resolutions and see if there's aspects we can adopt for Lafayette, if not create our own declaration as well.
Thank you, Jean. All right. And so Farshad, would you like to wrap up this question with how do you see Lafayette being an ally with the Bay Area's broader communities?
It's really tough to come in last when you like the other candidates, so you can't, drop anything new here. So I agree with a lot of it. I would just put it this way: we don't live on an island. Everything we do is interrelated. What happens around us is going to affect us. Having said that, I do agree that there are some things where we're just different. I mean, San Francisco and Lafayette are not the same. And that's not a bad thing. I've worked in San Francisco all my life. I love San Francisco. I live there. But the issues aren't the same. We both need housing. That I agree with. But where we put the housing, the number, et cetera, it's different. We need to keep that in mind. I am all in favor of working with surrounding communities on every issue. It doesn't mean we have to join and follow, but we go, listen, collaborate. And as Gina said, let's lead. We have some of the smartest people in the world who live here. Let's go, join them, lead them in the right direction for the things that we see we should be doing as a community and the larger community. By the way, when I say community, I start Lafayette first, but to me, the community is bigger. Maybe it's a Pollyannish way, but the community is the world. So we can start off here and make it better. That's the way I would see it.
Great answers, everyone. Now the questions get a bit longer. Lafayette's general plan describes the city as semi-rural in character. It's a part of the city's mission statement. According to the US Census Bureau, about half of Lafayette is classified as no rural population, while the other half is classified as lowest concentration of rural population. Keeping this in mind, how would you define semi-rural? And how important do you think single-family zoning is for preserving Lafayette's character, whatever that character may be? Starting with Cam.
Thanks, Jeremy. So, you know, the definition of semi-rural has been a debate. There's one document actually that Brandon Anderson produced where it's actually defined. I have no idea where it is, like on a piece of binder paper. Semi-rural to me means, you know, living around open space in an area that I would consider is far, far away from an urban area like San Francisco, but being able to go on my bicycle, you know, 15 minutes down to Safeway or to our library or to the Veterans Memorial. I think that theme in general is absolutely critical to our city. I think it's why people move here. I think it's why people love Lafayette. And I think our motto is absolutely true. Great schools, Green Hills, or Green Hills, great schools, however you want to prioritize the two. But it's a motto that's stuck and that people believe in all demographics. And I found over my 4 years, overwhelming, you know, sentiment that this type of community is one that people want, but that people are slowly and gratefully, I'm grateful for this, are coming around to smart growth, especially in our downtown area, that involves affordable housing in particular. So we do need to change, but we need to change in the right way. Change is good. So those are my thoughts. Thanks, Jim.
Thanks, Cam. And moving on to Carl.
Well, first, I think the Census Bureau definition or designation is irrelevant. The Census Bureau classification is binary. You're either urban or you're rural. So Lafayette and Emeryville are both urban, even though there are vast differences. Everywhere in our city, you're close to hillsides and ridges. Just walking around the reservoir gives you a sense of how very special we are. And I apologize to my friends over on Spring Hill, but if you drive to the end of Spring Hill, you can either take a trail up to the ridges, or my favorite, you can walk into the canyons, oak-lined canyons, laurel trees. It's unbelievable. It's like being in California 300 years ago. You're a million miles from everywhere. It's wonderful. So I would define semi-rural as living in harmony with nature's gifts of beautiful open hillsides and protecting them for those who come after us. And should a forward-thinking city like Lafayette strive to embody a semi-rural character? Absolutely. And it should do everything it can to protect its hillsides and ridges and expand its publicly owned open space. And then how importantly you think single-family housing is for preserving the semi-rural character? It's not critical. Single-family zoning is more important for getting density in the right places, keeping in mind fire safety, traffic, soil stability, and other issues.
Thank you, Carl. Farshad, repeating the question, how would you define semi-rural, and how important do you think single-family zoning is for preserving that semi-ruralness, whatever it may mean?
So I would say I definitely agree with Carl about the census definition not meaning anything. I'm considered white under the census, and no airport has ever considered me white as I walk through it. So let me just leave it at that. That's a little joke I say, but it's serious. You know, I definitionally means nothing. To me, semi-rural means having what is like an urban core, where you have stores, everything is available, downtown area, and then you're surrounded by open space. That's how I see it. You go downtown, you can get anything you would get if you're going to San Francisco, but then can take a bike, go to a hill, and be an open space. One of the reasons we moved here was for the open spaces. I love hiking. I love disappearing. Like as Carl said, you can go back in time, so to speak, and just disappear into nature. That's hard to find. That's a gift that we have here. So again, I think this question is kind of worded to get to another issue we're going to talk about. I don't think affordable housing and semi-rural need to fight each other. It's not a zero-sum game. You can have affordable housing, you can have the right areas for it and not affect the open spaces that we have. Simply, you can have both, and it's not easy, but we're in the right direction to get there.
Thank you, Farshad. And finally, Gina.
Okay. My definition of semi-rural is a small town with a vibrant business center and homes in low density neighborhoods nestled in the setting of rolling hills and open spaces. And it's probably not much different from the residents that first voted to incorporate in 1968 to protect those very same values as the city was growing and for their future, to have control over the future development. I believe the community of Lafayette has been forward thinking since incorporation because of those reasons, because we have that remaining desire to maintain our environment values along with local control and of land use and development, and we'll always have single family homes. And I do think it's important because they contribute to that semi-rural characteristic that we're all describing and that people have moved here for. And a variety of housing options is important. It invites a variety of people to our city. That being said, like zoning for multifamily homes centered in downtown, single family housing also can provide opportunities for inclusive and affordable housing, specifically through ADUs. So there's actually, there's a lot of great benefit to having that range, and they all can contribute to the affordable housing question that's top of mind.
Thank you, Gina. On to our fourth question. One significant challenge to affordable development in Lafayette is the high cost of land and construction in the region, which leads developers to sell or rent units for high prices in order to turn a profit. Lafayette has fallen short of our low and very low income goals for the regional housing needs allocation. These targets will certainly increase in the next few years. What specific steps would you like the city to explore to make affordable development more economically viable in Lafayette? Starting with Farshad.
All right, so I agree with you. I actually looked at the numbers. We are, by 2022, we will be 112 off for very low, 48 off for low, and 52 for moderate. Overall, we're way past our RENA numbers, but for the very low, low, and moderate, we're off. And we need to work on that. There's no question about that. Again, we don't build houses, developers do. So the question is, how can you help with that? One of the potential specifics that you asked about, we already have a density bonus in our code. There's a potential for potentially increasing that density bonus if you provide more affordable housing, potentially increasing the number of units you could get. Again, something to look into. I know people don't want to hear this, but potentially having even more expedited processes to approve projects with more affordable housing, again, focusing on the downtown core. I think we can try to get rid of some fees potentially. I know it's not a good time to hear that with our budget deficit, and maybe something in the future, but maybe impact fees or planning fees, we abate those fees as a potential. And finally, in something I would not push for anytime in the near term is potential tax abatement. We can't do that now, absolutely not. I have to balance a budget every year, and I know the city has to balance the budget. So that's probably not an avenue, but I think those specific 4 steps are potential ways of trying to make it easier to build affordable housing.
Right on. Gina?
Well, I think the first thing we need to do is really acknowledge that economic viability issue. Developers basically have a much lower rate of return when they're making investments on this kind of lower and low income developments, as opposed to housing developments for different income levels, higher income levels. So I would suggest, obviously, as Farshad said, the density bonus is a good program to see if we're doing all the right things, or if there's other ways we can make that even richer for these particular types of buildings. We can also explore ways to reduce developer costs so they can recognize higher profit margins. We can look at our inclusionary zoning policy, and as Farshad said, there's things we could probably do that might not be very popular, but in a particular locations that maybe we put forth as in the downtown zone, we could remove some of those uncertainties for the developers and streamline the permitting process. See however we can remove red tape to get developers to go from their investment to construction to realizing returns on the investment will definitely be a more incentive to bring them to downtown and thinking creatively with us. Other things we could do is probably consider adaptive reuse of buildings currently underutilized in downtown and see if we can create incentives for that, taking advantage of places downtown core.
Great. Repeating the question, what specific steps would you like the city to explore to make affordable development more economically viable in Lafayette? Cam.
Thanks, Jeremy. It's a great question. So briefly, I do not agree with ABAG or MTC's methodology to assign housing numbers to our city. Their methodology is totally ambiguous, and I don't think they should have the authority to do so. So right now, for example, they should be pausing during a pandemic to let us wait and see what the housing demand and what the crisis that we're under will shape up to be. So they're jumping the gun and using a state legislative requirement as their excuse, which is absurd government in public policy, in my opinion. The only other thing I'll say is, let's just keep Sacramento out of trying to run our planning process. If we can do that effectively, we will enable our planning department to come up with these solutions that you're asking about right now.
Great. And wrapping that question up with Carl.
Okay, two preliminary comments before answering the question. There's another twist to this. I've seen developers buy land in the neighborhoods for a very high price because they think they can build more on it than they should. Then they come to the Design Review Commission and the Planning Commission and say, I have to build a 8,000 square foot house or two 5,000 square foot houses on this land in order to make it pencil out because I paid so much for it. We need to make sure and make clear that we're not going to give in to that. Second, just following up on something that Farshad said, one of the premises of the question is that Lafayette has fallen short of our goals. I want to make sure people understand what those are. The city doesn't build housing, as Farshad said. What RENA requires is that Lafayette have enough land zoned appropriately so that private developers can build a certain number of units, and Lafayette has done that. So then on to the question. In the neighborhoods, I think we do need to make it easier to add ADUs. Our staff is very busy now. This again comes down to priorities. Do we ask our staff to spend time on streamlining that system and making it easier? Danville has done that. It's something I think we should consider doing. And in the downtown, I think it comes down to being proactive. So to see if we can achieve economies of scale while still preserving the character of our downtown. And there's a lot of things that people just said I'd like to be able to comment on, but we'll try to get it in the questions and answers that follow.
Great, thank you.
All right, we are at the halfway point of the moderated questions, and we are going to stick with, well, we're going to talk now about zoning. So the next question is, if you could change one thing in our zoning code, what would you change and why? So first up would be Cam.
In all practicality, I wouldn't change anything right now. And I would wait to see how this virus changes the nature of our town and our region. So the zoning code to me right now, the Lafayette Municipal Code in general right now to me makes sense for our community. People are happy here. That doesn't mean we need to stop improving things, but change for change's sake is not something that I'm in favor of.
Okay, next up, Farshad.
I would actually generally agree with that. The only suggestion or potential is I know we are obviously terrified of wildfire danger. We all are. It's important. Public health and safety is an issue. So I think there's an opportunity there to address specific issues with wildfires in our zoning plan, because that's an upcoming issue. I don't think we have to wait out COVID or anything else to see that. I think more specificity about traffic in high fire zone areas, potentially evacuation plans specifically laid out within the zoning. I think those would be issues that we can address that are utterly important to everybody who lives in Lafayette. So that would be my suggestion. Specifics as to traffic and evacuation to wildfire areas. And I think they're all interrelated.
Great, thank you, Farshad. Okay, Gina, is there anything you would like to change about the zoning code and why?
I agree that I think, it's a good idea to wait and see in a lot of these things. But as we move into planning, one thing I would want to change would probably clean up the policy around the developers' alternatives in inclusionary housing, specifically the offsite development ordinance, because I don't agree that developers should have that option to put their low income housing options separate offsite from the planned development, as it lends to a perception of like income zoning, so to speak, segregation even. And certainly that's not a standard we want to initiate or set precedent for. So I don't think that really should be an option. If it were offsite development had to be considered, I would recommend policy reflects requirement to make sure that it's new construction offsite and not rehabilitation of existing low income housing inventory, because that doesn't add to our inventory overall.
Great, thank you, Gina. And Carl, your response to zoning?
Yeah, well, generally, I think we should wait to do anything with respect to zoning until we get into the general plan update. Although I do think we could move forward with putting a higher priority on accessory dwelling units. This is probably one issue where I'll have a mild disagreement with Gina. We actually have used, well, in terms of off-site affordable housing, that's an option that's open to the council. That's not something a developer says, I want to do it, and they can do it. That's something the council can consider. And what's really interesting about that is that if a developer asks for that, the council can require up to twice as many affordable units in order to approve that. So the council has done that with respect to the off-site affordable housing for the Woodbury project. We've got twice as many units as we otherwise would have, and it's worked out very well. So I know that there's a proposal that we not allow that, but I think that that's something that should be an option for the council, because it can work out very well.
Great, thank you very much. Okay, moving on to question number 6. Senate Bill 1000 is the Planning for Healthy Communities Act. It requires Californian cities to adopt an environmental justice element or integrate environmental justice related policies, objectives, and goals throughout other elements of their general plan. What are the top policy priorities you would like to see in the general plan to promote environmental justice in our community? Gina.
SB 1000 primarily applies to communities like Oakland and Richmond that have larger low-income populations that are disproportionately impacted by pollution and other health impacts. With that being said, there is a lot of environmental justice goals that we can pursue in Lafayette, and I would definitely suggest that we incorporate those type of policies throughout the general plan. Aside from rooting out any policies that hinder inclusivity and environmental justice, my top 3 priorities would be internet for all. That's kind of readily apparent that everybody should have access to the equipment and broadband they need to be online, because so much of the pandemic has indicated how that impacts equity issues. I would also prioritize monitoring and mitigation of air pollution and air quality, particularly around our transit corridors, and work with agencies to figure out how to create mitigation of that. I'd also put a priority on park space downtown, because parks provide opportunities for physical activity, community building, and have the added bonus of revenue, more commerce downtown. And so that's all good stuff.
Is good stuff. Okay, Cam.
It's great legislation. If I'm elected, though, I do not want to taint the ideas that the environmental task force, which should be asked by the council to come up with ideas and solutions and bring those back to the council through community input on potential solutions. So I'll just leave it at that. This is the beauty of having commissions and task forces to tackle in a good way solutions based on either legislative action, regional engagement, collaboration, and so forth. And then for the council to deliberate and make decisions. And a lot of those solutions come from public input. So I'll leave it at that. It's something that the environmental task force is gonna with Sustainable Lafayette weighing in, with these new groups that are forming around town weighing in, I think it's gonna be an exciting time.
Yes, it is definitely a direction Sustainable Lafayette is definitely taking a closer look at environmental justice. Absolutely. Okay. And Carl.
Well, I wasn't sure that I understood this question, because integral to the law is the concept of disadvantaged communities. And Lafayette overall is an advantaged community. So I'll agree with Cam. We should turn to the environmental task force to advise on this. I agree with Gina and what she's saying about downtown parks. I mean, this is just generally, I don't see it so much as an environmental justice, but we do need a park downtown. That's something that's been on the list of things to do for a long time, and I'd like to move that higher. But all of Lafayette is an advantaged community. So we need to look beyond our borders and think about what we could be doing in terms of our part to address the regional housing shortage. It comes back to not being an island and looking beyond our borders and what we can do to help. I don't think this particular statute was aimed at Lafayette. And so just looking at it, I think we just need to think about what we can do for those beyond our border.
Great, thank you. And Farshad, your thoughts on the Planning for Healthy Communities Act?
I was going to just say ditto to Carl. I'm a big fan of the law and what it's supposed to affect, but Lafayette was not the target of the SB 1000. As Gina said, it's Oakland, Richmond, it's the Hunters Point, Bayview area of San Francisco next to the Naval Yards. It's the Central Valley with the bad water supply. It's the not having the Flint, Michigan happen in areas of California. In terms of the one thing I can say we could do is what we've all said, and I'll say again, is bringing everybody to the table for the general plan. That's the future of the city. You bring the entire community in, even our less advantaged or advantaged, as Carl said, but bring the entire community, all neighborhoods, all demographics to the table, get input for the general plan, because that's our future. That's the only way I would see SB 1000 affecting Lafayette.
Okay, so that wraps up the shared portion of the questions that we had shared earlier with the candidates. So next, we're going to move on to a couple of questions they have not prepared for. So Jeremy, what do you got?
We probably only have time for one question, but it's a good one. It's a doozy. And after I ask the question, candidates will get 10, 15 seconds to reflect, and then I'll start asking people to go. So Lafayette incorporated as a city in 1968. The same year, the Federal Fair Housing Act banned discriminatory housing laws. In the decade between 1960 and 1970, Lafayette's population almost tripled, growing by 13,000 people. In the 50 years since 1970, our population has grown by only another 7,000 residents. Population growth slowed in large part because, upon its incorporation, the city of Lafayette pursued policies that restricted housing supply. It is no coincidence that these restrictive housing policies were put in place only when explicitly racist housing policies were outlawed by the Fair Housing Act. What should Lafayette do today to address its history of implicitly racist, restrictive housing policies? 15 seconds.
So while we're doing this pause, just a quick reminder to the audience, if you do have questions, please use the Q&A and not the chat feature. I do see we have a couple of good questions in the chat, but if people could please use the Q&A, that would be most appreciated.
Great. All right, let's start with Farshad.
I think we've talked about what we can start doing to make change. First things first, the demographics of this city have changed tremendously, not over the last 30 years, but I would say over the last 10 years. We have more diversity, we have more inclusion. We need a lot more of that, but I think those different voices and viewpoints are going to help steer us in the right direction. Our point of adding more affordable housing in the downtown corridor hopefully gets around maybe keeping people out. That was done before. I can happily say I don't think anybody who is on this screen or waiting would have been in favor of those rules back then, and we sure as heck aren't in favor of them today. We've moved on, we can do better, but I think the key is to get different voices to the table to steer our way into the future. That's the way I see it.
Thank you. Gina.
Well, I agree with Farshad. I think we need to, moving forward, that being said, we need to make sure that anything in our municipal code or our policies or our planning completely roots out any of those old policies or references to that. I think that's kind of critical. And then it is moving forward in terms of looking to ways we can create those opportunities for obviously a diverse housing options to not only for people of ethnic differences, but all sorts of differences to make Lafayette a more diverse place. The other thing we can do is do what we are doing with the community, the task force that Cam and Vice Mayor Candell are working on. It's so important to listen to the stories, listen to what the challenges are and the ideas for moving forward, because that's the only way we could do it. We need to go to where the people are at, actually, instead of waiting for them to come to us. That's probably a big part of it, to find out how we can be more welcoming and move forward, keep on moving forward.
Thank you, Gina. Carl?
The main thing we do is we look to the future and what we want the city to be and how we make it more diverse and how we make it more inclusive and how we make it more sustainable. The big reason the population growth slowed is because we build out most of the flat land. We have to recognize that. And I mean, that's just a fact. So I don't look back at that and see that as a big issue. Again, I think we need to look forward. We've talked tonight about things that we would like to do to make this a more inclusive, more sustainable, more diverse city. I think we need to focus on that and make that happen.
Thank you, Carl. And finally, Cam.
Thanks. I would agree with Carl. It's all about the future. Looking back, I did this before I ran in 2016. Look back at the history of the governance of our city from incorporation until 2016. We did some awesome things. We also made some mistakes, and I do believe that there are some mistakes that we have not rectified. That's why I asked for this task force to evolve or to establish. And it is for the task force to listen to the community, to sort of track our future forward. There is a bottom line, I've said it before, there is an undercurrent of racism in our town. And if we don't address it now in the right way, collaboratively with everybody in town, we have the risk of some parts of history repeating itself. So now's the time to do it, and it's time to do it in a positive way, and not look in the rearview mirror as much as we'd like to, but look to the future. And there's a lot of bright things to look forward to in the future in Lafayette.
Thank you for your answers. That is going to wrap up our moderated portion of the event. Moving on to the unmoderated questions. This is an opportunity for the community members of Lafayette to ask what you want directly to the candidates, either the group as a whole or an individual using the Q&A feature on Zoom. Mike and I will read off your name, or say you're anonymous, and the question you ask. Please pardon any mispronunciations. If a question goes to an individual candidate, the other candidates will be given an opportunity to respond. Mike?
Sure. Yep. So it's going to run the same way as earlier. The comments and questions will all be based for the Lafayette community. And just like the moderated portion, it's going to be 1.5 minutes to respond. And it does look like we have a few questions here to choose from. Jeremy, do you already have one in mind that looks good, or?
Yeah, sure. I've been checking these out. A lot of good questions. The first one, what personal household action do you take that is most impactful and most beneficial to sustainability? Sorry, forgot to say who I'm starting with. Farshad.
I mentioned this before. If it's, we are almost at a neutral energy, zero energy house. That's what we focus in on every day. So we have solar, electric car, tankless water heater, all combined to try to be energy neutral.
Okay. And Gina?
Well, I guess was the question personal every day?
Right, exactly. Like what is something that you're doing in your own, I mean, obviously it's not too personal, but so something that you do within your home that helps promote sustainability.
Definitely what we're doing now is looking at the real basic things to do, recycle and reuse, because that's a family of 4. It's important. We have the ability to reduce a lot of unnecessary items. So we try to lessen that impact as much as possible with using whatever we can, recycling as much as we can, composting, and doing the educating the kids. There's always some new way to do things, and that's important too, so that they can take that and they're pretty innovative of themselves. So I would say just the simple things that we do every day would be that, and that does make a difference.
Excellent. And
Carl?
I wear the same shirt every day. You can watch for this shirt on the Homeowners Council forum. Well, we do solar for our pool heating now. And I have to give credit to Steve Richard. I was talking to him. We're on deep green, but I didn't realize there was something else, the local solar. And so we've signed up for that. I have to say we're on the waiting list because I think there's only about 300 households who can be on that, but it's solar that's provided locally by the new facility that MCAE has built. And you know, it's one of those things I hadn't known about it. It's something we should probably do more to publicize. But I understand we're still we have a goal of trying to get 1,000 households on deep green, and we still need to try to do that. Personally, again, we have 2 large green trash cans, a big recycling can, and a very small normal trash can. So we try to manage things as best we can.
Great. And finally, Cam.
Thanks. So I'm doing my best to convince my 2 daughters not to do laundry 6 times a day. That's number 1. Number 2, we just made our first payment on solar that's connected to my electric car, and I'm excited for that. With the engineering now, we've got enough sun. And the third is MCE Deep Green, and I saw Wei Tai is on the attendee list, so I need to give a shout out to Wei Tai for his leadership in the MCE arena and influencing our town and our community to go MCE and to go deep green. the goal that Carl talked about is one that this council, the next council, should make a strategic goal for our town. We've lost track on that a bit over the last few years. Thanks.
Great. Thank you, Cam. The next question from the audience, another anonymous attendee. What is your position about development of housing at the BART properties north of Highway 24? And we will be starting with Carl.
Why is that the one I get to go first? I think that needs to be part of the general plan update discussion. I think that's going to be an important part of it. We need to get community input on that, and I'll leave it at that for now.
All right, Cam.
Yeah, listen, if we're elected, the comments we make here could result in us having to recuse ourselves on very, very important decisions. So it's a great question. Everybody here knows I was very much against AB 2923 and flew around the state to meet mayors to ask them to lobby against the bill passing with their local legislators. And that was under my rubric of really fighting hard for local land use control. So let's see how the cards play out. And if it's a proposition that comes before the city, if I happen to be, on the council, I will obviously take a very impartial view in any decisions that I make, but I don't want to, at this point, put myself at risk or the city at risk if I am elected.
Sounds reasonable. Farshad.
Can I just say ditto? I'm kidding. It's a true statement, but I will say this. The law is written right now, unless there are changes, that property has to be zoned for the law by 2022. So I will say that right now, as written, we have to do that. But as Cam said, we don't know where it's going to go in the future, what it is. But right now, we would have to zone it for the law. That's as far as I would say.
Okay, thanks very much. Mike, you want to choose the next question or two?
Sure, one just popped up right now. It's how do you view the crosses of Lafayette as a tool for inclusivity? And when I'm assuming they mean the crosses of Lafayette, is that in reference to the crosses across from the BART station? Okay.
I would guess.
Let's see what order. We're out of our order lists. Okay, I'll use this list. I'll start with Carl again. How would you see the crosses of Lafayette as a tool for inclusivity? How would you interpret that question?
That is a very interesting question. I was on the council when the crosses of Lafayette were put in place. It was very controversial at the time. The council appropriately dealt with it as a sign ordinance matter, not as a matter of expression, because we can't regulate expression. I anticipated that over time, the interpretation of the crosses would morph, that people who might have seen it as a controversial thing at the beginning would see it differently. I can't say with confidence that I understand completely how people within the community see it, but I think we've moved more to seeing it as a symbol of shared sacrifice and more of a symbol of those who have sacrificed for us. So it's seen much more positively than it was when it was first put in place. I mean, I look at it and I see it very positively. Whether it's, I think it's something that brings us together. So I see it as a symbol of inclusivity.
Okay, and Cam, would you like to answer that question?
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Mike. Listen, it's a great question because it has been an issue and a matter, back when Carl was on the council and exercised awesome leadership around it, because it was very divisive at the time. From what I understand, I wasn't here, but I would not represent the crosses as a tool. That is the wrong word. it is a symbol of sacrifice and of the brave men and women who've died in war for our country. That's the way I see it. So every time I drive by it, I pause and think about all of those human lives that have been lost. And so I see it as a potential source of rallying for the community to show appreciation of the sacrifice. While I know the initial intent was more anti-war, I believe it has morphed into a symbol that can bring us together. But I don't believe the government or the city should get involved in private land use matters, and this is on private property, unless we see a violation of a city ordinance that we really have to go after. Now, the sign ordinance does apply, but in this particular case, if it's doing positive things for the collective community, and I'm talking about 26,000 people, not just the people that go to BART and live around it, then we should, as a council, make pragmatic decisions when applying those ordinances.
May I answer that question?
Yeah, absolutely.
Full disclosure, so I am on the
I
board.
guess I should say,
We're going to answer the BART question as well, if you would like to answer that one.
Well, I would bring that back to what everybody said. I think it's a law. We're going to have to basically comply with that. But that being said, I think we'd be proactive in working with the community and preparing for what could be coming and setting up really as best we can, working with BART. Because right now they have been responding to us like, yeah, that's coming down the pike, but not right now. It's just getting as much of a head start as possible with kind of what they might be planning in the future. So as far as the Lafayette Hillside Memorial, I am actually on the board for that. And what I think that memorial does, it's a medium for inclusivity, because you can bring to it what you want, and that was the intention, to whether you see it as a peace memorial, whether you see it as an honor. I mean, it's all of that, and it welcomes all takers, and it is a place to definitely be of the community. And it's been an honor working with the people that started it, and protecting the legacy as best we can. And so I think that's a cultural icon to be proud of as the city of Lafayette.
Okay. And Farshad, did you want an opportunity to answer the question on the crosses?
Sure. I don't think it's a matter of inclusivity or exclusivity. I agree with what everybody has said. I can say I've seen war up close and personal, so that hits me even more. To me, people can see it, which it is, sacrifices that people have made, and it's also can be a message of anti-war. It's your view, and I'm a huge proponent of the First Amendment. And again, I'm not saying if I would have been on the city council, and I know we have a signed ordinance, but this time I'm glad we worked around it to allow it to go forward, because I'm such a believer in the First Amendment. That's where I would put it. And I think, again, it's your view of how you look at those. They're not just crosses anymore. They're more than crosses there too. It's for all the people who've sacrificed. So it hits me when I go by it every single time too. So again, big proponent of the First Amendment.
Carl?
Oh, Carl, go ahead.
Yeah, I just want to make clear that as council members, if we were to become council members, we cannot deal with that as to what the message is that is expressing. And I also make clear that the council, the 5 members of the council at the time it was constructed, did not consider at all the message that it was delivering. In fact, none of us knew what any of the other council members thought about the war or about what messages those crosses were giving. We weren't thinking of it as a message. There was the sign ordinance did not apply to the crosses. So the council could not deal with it as a sign ordinance matter. The council just and couldn't deal with it as what it was expressing. So basically, the crosses now are grandfathered in. There is a new sign ordinance that would apply if someone were to try to do something similar to that on another hillside.
And we did allow Carl a second word. Does anybody else have any final words on the crosses, or do you want to move on?
All I was going to say is I appreciate the clarification.
And Camp,
Cam?
Yeah, just real quickly, for those of you who don't know, the city was offered the opportunity to purchase that, or actually was offered the opportunity for that property to be donated to the city at the end of last year, and we decided not to unanimously. A lot of the discussion during the time and deliberation did involve government involvement around religious symbols, which obviously the government cannot get involved in, and the proposition itself did not make sense to the taxpayers in at least my view. I believe that was the majority view of the council, but that happened at the end of last year. Thank you. Thanks, Mike. Thanks, John.
Sure. And then we do have one question from Beth Ferree. It's currently on Mount Diablo Boulevard in downtown Lafayette. The parking spaces on the north side have been blocked off with a new wooden sidewalk. There's less parking, but it's more pedestrian and bike friendly. What do you think of maintaining this and expanding it after COVID-19 is over? So this goes back to pedestrian and bike safety and Mount Diablo. So I'll go, we can go in the order on my screen here. So just to mix it up a little bit, Farshad, that would be you first.
So I'll be honest with you, it's a tough question, because when I saw it go up, I was thrilled. I love the fact that there are extra places for people to sit and support those businesses. To be able to do it, it almost has a European feeling that you don't have cars rushing by you. You get to sit outside in the beautiful weather we have most of the year. I love it. But there is the other side of it. We have a lack of parking downtown, unfortunately, for our businesses, generally speaking. So you have that weighing against each other. We want our local businesses to thrive, and sometimes that requires people being able to park in front of their establishment to get it. So I'm not trying to sound political here. It's a tough issue. If it was completely up to me with nothing else at play, which there always is, I love walking. I love being able to walk around and sit outside over a car, but I know there are issues involved with our businesses. So it's a tough one for me.
Okay. And Carl, how do you feel about parking and pedestrians and bike safety on Mount Diablo?
Well, I definitely think we need to do everything we can to encourage more pedestrians and more bicycles, but there is the trade-off with the parking. We have done, as you know, on the south side of Mount Diablo, there is an area that was carved out. There was a long look taken at whether we should be doing that in front of one of the restaurants there. I think whenever we can do that, it adds a great feeling. I agree with the European feeling, and I think we should encourage it if we can, but it's a big trade-off.
Okay, great. And Gina?
Well, agreed. It is a big trade-off, and I think what's wonderful about it was the city being flexible to allow that for right now under this time when those businesses needed that access and needed that extra space to basically offer more to customers at this time and stay afloat as best they can. So that's really great. As far as it being a more permanent thing, I don't know. Once again, there's trade-offs, and we have to be aware of the accessibility issues for people. As much as we want to promote biking and walking, there is issues that we need to think of for accessibility, for the businesses in general. So there's a lot of trade-offs, and I would think of maybe other things, maybe one time a month or a quarter, we can close off the streets or sections of the streets in general and have that European feel. And so there's ways to still take advantage of that in the right weather and the right time, but work on accommodating the balance that we need to keep.
Great. And Cam?
Yeah, thanks. And thank you, Gina. The first thing I was going to do was just to commend staff for executing that idea and working with the businesses to do so. It was very forward leaning, and Mayor Anderson's leadership behind it. It's very appropriate for COVID. If we didn't have COVID, I'd be completely against it, and would advocate for, you know, a holistic solution, a holistic strategy, working with the chamber very closely and working with our local businesses. Post COVID, our businesses need to thrive, so they need traffic in and out, period. And the city needs sales tax revenue to do all of these other things we've been talking about. So while I am super for a much more pedestrian and bicycle friendly town than we have now, and it will come, it will, I'm confident it will. Right now, we need to focus on the acute needs of the city. And when this virus abates finally, hopefully sooner rather than later, we need to get people in and out of our businesses so the vibrancy of our downtown can sustain. And that's, to me, the bottom line.
Okay, great. Okay, we are getting close to about 8:30, and I know we want to stay on our timeline, but I think
Two more questions I think that we're gonna do. One from Susan Callister. She directs this to Farshad, Gina, and Carl in that order. What position would you take on the City Council's decision to approve the terrace's proposal, including its almost 60 units, it's over 60 units, actually, for low-income residents? Starting with Farshad.
So normally I wouldn't, but my position is actually clear. I voted on this project on the Planning Commission. I actually voted against the terraces because I believe there's a public health and safety issue with them. I'm a huge proponent of affordable housing, which I said during every one of those meetings. I will continue to push for affordable housing. I just didn't think that was the right project because of the public health and safety issues. So the reason I'm answering, because I'm on the record about this. There's nothing new. I'm not undercutting what the city council did. I'm just telling you how I voted on the record.
Thank you. Gina?
And you know what, I actually need to defer answering that, because I think that decision, although it's been made, it could still come back in front of council, in front of whether it be design review issues that came up or any other type of follow-up to that. So what I can say is of course I'm in favor of affordable housing in the right place with all the right amenities in place, and I think that you know, to me, more of that type of building closer to the downtown core is ideal. And that's probably all I can go to say to that right now.
Carl?
This is the one project I won't discuss for the reason that Gina gave. I do have a history with this particular parcel that if anyone wants to look up, beginning in 1998, they can see my votes on it. But I think that's irrelevant to what's happening right now. So I think it's just better if anyone who's about to go on the council or who's a candidate for the council that does not give an opinion on that.
And Cam, you get an opportunity to make any comments you would like.
Yeah, thank you very much. I appreciate it. So everybody knows I voted for it, and I will talk in terms of right now, this current minute, I guess, or 60 seconds. Very, very much for the project. Was very concerned on the public safety, public health risk side, as everybody maybe who stayed up until 3 a.m. saw, and grappled over that. I went into those 2 hearings, because I did appeal the approval from the plan. That was me who appealed it. And I really felt that the city council, those who the people elected, needed to take accountability for the final decision. That's why I did so. But as far as my personal decision, my personal vote, I was very much for it after a lot of great deliberation, I believe, de novo from the very, very beginning by our council. And I'm proud of our council for the way we handled it. And I really commend the Planning Commission too for their work leading up to it. They did a fantastic job.
Thank you, Cam. Our final question of the night. And just a quick clarification, if we did not get to your question, and there are a few that we didn't manage to get to, we're going to copy and paste them. We'll send them to the candidates and we'll post them on our websites. And hopefully the candidates will be able to give fuller answers than they necessarily have in this format where they've only had a little bit of time. What one word would you use to describe Lafayette? Starting with Gina.
Easy one.
You can take a few seconds.
I'd say bountiful.
Great word. Carl?
Referencing back to our prior discussion, semi-rural.
Cameron Burks.
Love.
Love Lafayette.
And Farshad.
Great.
Great. Phenomenal answers, everyone, and a great question, too. So that concludes our questions for the night. Every candidate is now going to get 2 minutes for their final remarks. We're running a little short on time, so let's get to it, starting in reverse order from the opening remarks. Farshad.
I will not take up the full 2 minutes. Again, I want to thank everybody for making the time to let us speak to this group and the people who are taking their Friday nights to actually listen to us. So that's great. And it actually shows what we want out of the community, people getting involved. The only thing I'll say again is I'm hoping that you would vote for me because I'm trying to bring a new voice to the city council. I'm not saying don't vote for me against someone else, vote for me for me. That's the way I would look at it. And one other point I'll make, and this is not in any way to denigrate what anybody else has done. I've intentionally not taken endorsements because I want people to vote for me directly. I want you to talk to people who know me, that's fine. But I want you to reach out to me, listen to me. I am who I am. I will bring a new voice. And finally, what I'm known for is to bring people to the table and to solve problems. I'm not one who pushes off things to let other people do it. Let's get the smartest people, which is almost everyone who lives in our town, together, and let's find solutions. And that's it. Thank you.
Great. Carl?
What I've done through my years on the Planning Commission and the City Council is to bring new ideas and work to implement them. In 2005, I suggested that the council form the Environmental Strategy Task Force. The council agreed to do that. That led to the adoption of the environmental strategy. It led to the formation of the Environmental Task Force. It also was a factor in Sustainable Lafayette coming about. We also formed a task force that looked at senior housing and resulted in the only 100% affordable housing to be built in Lafayette in the last 30 years. I'm asking for the opportunity to continue to bring new ideas to the council and to the city and to continue to implement those ideas in order to make Lafayette an even better place to live for all of its residents. And I appreciate your consideration.
Thank you. Gina?
Well, I would say I'm passionate about Lafayette and the people here and the quality of life here and sharing that. I think I am well experienced and have known successes in bringing issues dear to the community safety issue. I went head to head with PG&E and continue to do so to improve gas safety where they were lacking. And it took a lot of team building, a lot of effort, a lot of working across the community and across different agencies to get that product. And that's how I would work on the issues that face the city, and especially as we go into recovery and rebound mode from where we are now, as well in parallel working with those issues. So I think there's a lot I bring to the table, and I have the energy, enthusiasm, and would really love to have your vote. I think another advantage, I think for the first time is an opportunity if I do get elected to city council to have a women majority in Lafayette history on city council. So that's something that I think would also be an incredible opportunity for the city. Thank you
Thank
for
you,
the
Tracy,
opportunity.
and wrapping up the night. Oh, sorry, Mike.
Oh, so everybody had a chance? Okay.
Oh, it's Cam. Cam's
Cam was
the final.
That's what I thought. Cam didn't have a chance first.
Thanks. Well, how cool. This is awesome. This is cool. You've got Sustainable Lafayette, which has been around for a while. They've done terrific things for this town. And then you've got Inclusive Lafayette, which was just formed and is being led by Jeremy. That's on the scene. And you've got at one point, I think almost 50 participants on a Friday night listening. So my time will be spent by saying kudos to both of your organizations and the impact you're making on the community. I really, really personally appreciate it. I also want to say I really appreciate, Carl, your leadership during your time on the council. I didn't know you had spearheaded those things, and that is awesome. And for those in Lafayette that came before us, you've done a terrific job, leadership and the community, a terrific job making our community what it is today. And I say that a lot, and it was a lot of hard work in 50 years, and I appreciate it very much. Listen, my final thing I'll say is, and I'll just follow up on what Farshad said, kind of reminded me, I'm not, for those of you that don't know, I am not actively campaigning or conventionally campaigning. So you won't see any signs with my names on it or newspaper ads or so forth. I'm not doing that to compete with anybody on this screen, because I believe everybody on this screen would be fantastic leaders on this city council. What I am doing though is I'm splitting up the money that I would have spent on those signs, and I would have self-funded this anyways. I just can't ask people for money, by donating to a series of groups, and I'm equally splitting those up. John Muir Land Trust is one of them. The NIH is one of them as well, and Dr. Fauci's organization, and many of those physicians I know personally on COVID research. And then the benevolent funds of both the county sheriff's department and our fire district, and then the Institute for Other and Belongings at University of California, Berkeley. If any of you are familiar with that group, it's a group that brings just fantastic, phenomenal ideas around advancing these things that I intended to incorporate into the task force when I have that idea around diversity and inclusion. But it goes they do things way beyond that. So I think they deserve support. So instead of campaigning, I'll be doing that. And I'll of course always be on Zoom with Jeremy and Mike with you guys if you ever do this again. I really enjoyed it. Thank you.
Yeah, well, thank you. Yeah, no, tonight I felt like it went fantastic. It was Jeremy and I's our very first candidates forum that we've ever put together. So, and we absolutely do appreciate you taking your time on a Friday night to spend an hour and a half, couple hours with us and talking to the community. Hopefully, maybe there could have been some press in the audience as well. So I'm sure there'll be a few articles coming out soon. So yeah, with that, we're going to wrap up Lafayette Forward, a virtual candidate forum. Everyone, please give the candidates a round of applause. We'll go back to that joke again as we started. Thank you again. It was very insightful responses, and I don't think Lafayette can go wrong in the future with this upcoming election. So, Jeremy?
Thank you. Have a great weekend, everybody.
Thank you, guys.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Make sure to vote on November 3rd.
That's right.
Thank you. That's important.
Lafayette is sustainable. Lafayette on
Yeah.
A lot. And if you enjoyed this video, share it on YouTube. Lafayette would simply not be the same without such an informed and civically engaged community. So everyone who watched, who joined us for this evening, it was wonderful to have you. Take care, everyone.
Take care.
Thank you. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.